TV now, a brand new book claims that the late Queen believed Prince Andrew would make a better match for Princess Diana than Charles. Oh, how history would have been changed. Joining me now to talk about all this is talkTV's royal correspondent Rupert Bell. Good morning to you, Rupert. Of course, we still have Charlie Rowley in the studio as well. Now, Rupert, this is the latest. I mean, there's a whole string of new books that are coming out. This is by Ingrid Seward of Majesty magazine, very well connected, very well sourced, and her new book, My Mother and I, and it's being serialised. We hope to speak to her as soon as she's allowed to start the broadcast interviews. But you make a very good replacement, I have to say. Now, Rupert, we're hearing so much more is coming out about, you know, what the Queen thought of this, what Prince Philip, what Charles sort of thinks, some you know, stuff about his childhood, it's Gordonston School, and what the Queen thought of Diana. Where are these stories coming from? Why? Robert Hardman's written a new book as well. Where are all these stories suddenly coming from? Is the palace feeding these stories? Do they want these stories out there, or what? Where's it all coming from?
Well, I think you've hit the nail on the head. Both Robert Hardman and Ingrid Seward are extremely well connected. Ingrid Seward, as we know, she's been editor of Majesty magazine since the early 80s. So she's got her finger on the pulse and probably just has picked up context. And if you read about the Gordonston schooling of Prince Charles, of the King rather, Ross Benson, I think her late husband, was there. So, you know, she's pretty well sourced. And I think, you know, over the years, and you just pick up a vibe. Now, when it comes to the Queen saying Andrew was a better match, well, probably more age appropriate, because he was born in 1960. There was a 11-year age gap between the King and Diana. So, and she was still a teenager at the time. So clearly, you know, it was seen. Maybe you'd say that was inappropriate, but I think Diana at that stage was definitely in love with Charles. But at the time, then it turned obviously sour subsequently. But I suppose you would say Andrew is more age appropriate. Yes. But I think ultimately convention, because of her background, suggested that she was a suitable bride. Well, you know, she was the
daughter of an earl. And she was young enough that she was conceivably a virgin. And we know this is what it was all about. But again, funnily enough, marriages do turn sour when your husband actually is still in love with another woman. Call me old-fashioned. I don't think it was ever going to work out. But there we are. But I mean, how different would our history be if that had been the case?
Well, yes, because you've never know. Well, if he'd been able to say marry Camilla in day one, or that relationship was allowed to grow the course that it perhaps
I think the palace have themselves to blame. The palace have themselves to blame because they're the ones that stopped him from marrying. You know, Margaret was stopped from marrying the man she loved. He was stopped from marrying the woman he loved. And he was sent away on this long journey. They hope they lose interest in each other. And eventually Camilla married her then long-term husband, Shan Kidd. Look, you know, I mean, Parker Bowles, sorry, Major Parker Bowles. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, they created this, but the deal was that, you know, you marry a future king, and then you put up with everything, and you keep stum, try out a couple of kids, and wear nice clothes, and shut up and put up with everything. And she wouldn't do that.
No, but now that luckily things have changed to some extent as far as that is concerned, but you've got to think of the conventions of the time. The royal family was extremely conservative with a small c, and didn't like to rock the boat and thought this is the way you have to do it. And that was the problem of the time. Now, things were clearly changing in the late 70s. So you're thinking now, this is 45, 40, whatever, however many years ago it is. It certainly was a very different dynamic to what it is now. But the royal family was slow to change and sort of pick up the sort of post-60s revolution and the vibe that was going on. They were extremely traditional in their approach to what they thought was suitable. And then we kind of went
a bit pretty traditional with Kate, although there was a horrible lot. People always forget a lot of sniping about her, wasn't there? About, you know, Dalston Manuel and her mother being an air stewardess. And then, of course, it all went so well with Meghan. Let me also ask you, though, we're talking about Prince Andrew. Netflix, we must have a look at a clip in a moment, but Netflix have released the first images of their movie, basically about that extraordinary Prince Andrew interview with Emily Maitlis on Newsnight, played by Gillian Anderson and Rufus Sewell. I mean, I think I think Andrew's done well to have Rufus still play him. Let's have a little watch and a listen of a clip.
She described dancing with you,
no.
and you profusely sweating, and that she went on to have bath, possibly.
There's a slight problem with the sweating because I have a peculiar medical condition, which is that I don't sweat.
Sorry, I thought we had a clip of the Netflix. That was actually the original. My God, they're convincing as Prince Andrew and Emily Maitlis. No, that was actually the real people, Emily Maitlis and Prince Andrew. Well, of course, he doesn't apparently sweat all that. But we've got some images of the two of them in the interview, and it is look, it was absolutely devastating for not just Prince Andrew but for the royal family. This interview, wasn't it? This is going to dredge it all back up again.
Well, yes, it was a disastrous PR move, but it wasn't necessarily the royal family, actually, or members of the household said, don't do this, but it was Andrew's fault. That was the problem. And then he's supposed to have said to Emily Maitlis, and I'm sure it'll all come out, well, that went well. He thought he'd done a good job, and this was the problem. And then he's been hoisted by his own petard, and it's caused him problems ever since, because people started taking the mickey out, he lost face. You know, that was the problem with that interview. He was, his own counsel, he thought he was going to be able to brazen himself out of it. Well, this film and other documentaries will highlight this particular problem.
And it just
if you
keeps
look
coming
from
back.
that interview, he's had his problem.
The only person I think who's done really well out of this, well, people, is the manager of the Pizza Express in Woking. But there we are. And Rupert Bell, thank you very much indeed. Our talkTV world correspondent. Very quick word from Charlie Rennie. This dredges it all up again. Not good for the royals.